Starting with the introduction, what is blood in our daily life? Blood is an essential fluid that constantly flowing throughout the body for work. Blood carries oxygen and nutrients to body's tissues. It also removes waste by carries it away from cells and tissues. Then, blood consists of four important components, which is plasma, red blood cell, white blood cell, and lastly, platelets. What about the global blood shortages? Hospital facilities are facing donor shortages and storage limitations for real blood. This is because demand for platelets is also rising because platelets expired after only 5 days. So, scientists and researchers are developing synthetic red blood cell, which is called hemoglobin, platelets, and plasma. And now they are called as artificial blood. So then, what is artificial blood? Artificial blood is a lab-made substitute which is a not fully real blood replacement. It is designed to mimic the key functions of a real blood. Therefore, there are 3 key blood components in artificial blood, which is still in research. The first one is synthetic red blood cell. It is designed to mimic the oxygen carrying functions using modified or encapsulated hemoglobin. For example, scientists use earthworm. The second one is artificial platelets. Using nanoparticles-based particles help with blood clotting when blood vessels are injured. For example, scientists created erythromer, which is create hemoglobin oxygen binding to body's oxygen demand. The third one is synthetic plasma. Lab-produced plasma, which is drug feeds the blood to extend its life, maintain its volume, and carry blood clotting factors.
I will explain why we need artificial blood. Firstly, artificial blood is needed because the supply of donated human blood is limited. Not everyone is eligible to donate blood due to health conditions, age restrictions, or lifestyle factors. As a result, hospitals may face shortage, especially when the demand for blood increases. Artificial blood can help support the healthcare system when donated blood is insufficient. Secondly, artificial blood is important for use in emergency situations, in serious accidents, natural disaster, or case of severe bleeding. Patients require blood immediately to survive. However, donated blood may not always be available on time. Artificial blood allows medical staff to provide immediate treatment without waiting for donor blood. Thirdly, donated blood must be matched according to blood type before transfusion to prevent dangerous immune reactions. This matching process requires testing and time, which may delay urgent treatment. Artificial blood can be used without blood type matching, allowing faster medical intervention. Last, artificial blood helps reduce the risk of infection and disease that may be transmitted through blood transfusions. Although donor blood is screened and tested, there is still a small risk of infection. Artificial blood offers a safer alternative by reducing this risk. I will explain the type of artificial blood. First, hemoglobin-based oxygen carriers, HbOCs. Made using hemoglobin, the molecule in red blood cells that carries oxygen. Hemoglobin is purified and modified, so it can be functioned safely outside red blood cells. HbOCs deliver oxygen directly to body tissues. They do not require blood type matching and can be used in emergency situations. Next, we have perfluorocarbon-based oxygen carriers, PFCs, fully synthetic chemical compounds. They work by dissolving oxygen in the blood plasma and transporting it through the body. PFCs can carry oxygen effectively when the patient is given high levels of oxygen. They are chemically stable and have a long shelf life. Next, we have lab-grown or stem cell-derived red blood cells. Red blood cells produced in laboratories using stem cells, designed to function like natural red blood cells in carrying oxygens. This type aims to closely mimic real human blood, but is still under research and not widely used in hospital yet.
Hi, my name is Narain Shafika. For this part, I will explain how HbOCs are produced. HbOCs stands for hemoglobin-based oxygen carriers, and the main idea behind them is to use hemoglobin without using real red blood cell. First, scientists obtain hemoglobin from sources such as human blood, animal blood like cows, or through genetic engineering using bacteria or yeast. After that, the hemoglobin must be carefully purified to remove any harmful substances that could cause reactions in the human body. However, free hemoglobin is not stable outside red blood cells. Because of that, scientists chemically modify it. They combine or link hemoglobin molecules together or sometimes enclose them in small artificial structures. This step is very important to prevent toxicity and to make the hemoglobin last longer in the bloodstream. Finally, the modified hemoglobin is tested to make sure it can still carry oxygen efficiently. It also checked for safety before being considered for medical use. Next, I will explain how PFCs are produced. PFCs or perfluorocarbons are completely different from HBOCs because they are not made from biological materials. PFCs are synthesized in laboratories through chemical processes. These molecules contain only carbon and fluorine, which allows them to dissolve large amount of oxygen, much more than normal blood plasma. Since PFCs cannot mix naturally with blood, they are processed into a special emulsion. This means the PFCs are broken into very tiny droplets and mixed with emulsifying agents so they can circulate safely in the bloodstream. Before use, the PFC emulsion is loaded with oxygen and tested thoroughly. Scientists evaluate how well it delivers oxygen, how stable it is inside the body, and whether it causes any side effect.
I will explain the effectiveness of artificial blood compared to real blood. First, in terms of oxygen carrying ability, artificial blood such as HbOCs and PFCs is able to transport oxygen effectively in the body. However, it is still not as efficient as natural red blood cells for long-term oxygen delivery. Because of this limitation, artificial blood is mainly used for short-term situations, especially during emergencies, rather than for continuous circulation. Next, regarding immune reaction, artificial blood is designed to be compatible with all blood types, which reduce the risk of immune rejection. It also has a lower chance of causing allergic reactions compared to donated blood. However, strict testing is still required, as some artificial blood products may cause side effects such as inflammation. And lastly, in terms of disease transmission, artificial blood does not carry virus or bacteria like HIV or hepatitis. This greatly reduces the risk of disease transmission and makes artificial blood safer, especially in situations where clean donor blood is not available.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. I am Nur Atira binti Anwar Fikri, and today I'm going to talk about the current status in artificial blood. So let's dive into advances first. What are we going to talk in advances? First, clinical trial. Prospects of artificial blood, bioblood production, and clinical trial results 2025 explain that there is 4 clinical trial. The first one is preclinical stages. This is when researchers conduct the artificial blood to animal to test it out how the artificial blood will interact with the body. And second is initial clinical trial, where healthy volunteers come in so that researchers can test the artificial blood on them to see how the artificial blood will interact with the human body, and the outcome is, what is it? Is it safety for the human body, or is it effective, the artificial blood in the human body? And the third one is clinical trial stages, where the artificial blood being tested on larger group of patients with some medical condition so that the researcher can see the artificial blood effectiveness on medical treatments. And the last one is clinical trial result, where result may be vary since they are still under study about artificial blood, and somehow the data is still limited. The second advances of artificial blood is that they are universal artificial blood. The researchers create universal artificial blood. So what does that mean? What does the universal mean? So universal artificial blood means that this artificial blood can be transferred or can be transfused to any patient without knowing their blood type. The Star Reporter 2025 reported that since this artificial blood is created by the expired donor blood and can be transfused to any patient, this artificial blood can increase the available supply without needing the new donor. The third advances of artificial blood is that they have longer life shelf. So basically, for storage, red blood cells can be stored up to 42 days storage, while artificial blood can be restored at room temperature for several years. And for about circulation in our body, red blood cells can circulate in our body for 120 days. But for artificial blood, it can be circulate in our body for just 24 hours. So this is great for emergency purposes. The fourth advances is scientists has found ways to make artificial blood more efficient. But how? So basically, scientists said that the efficient artificial blood is that they have no nucleus. But how? How we're going to make nucleus gone from red blood cell so that we can turn the artificial blood more efficiently. So according to New Medical 2025, scientists has found a key, which is a signal molecular CXCL12 that triggers the development of red blood cell, which is CXCL12, that will make red blood cells mature and triggers the expulsion of nucleus in the red blood cell. So this finding can be really a game changer for scientists so they can make efficient artificial blood. The last advances of artificial blood is that there is artificial blood that can be stable in any condition. According to Mittal et al. 2022, erythroma, which is a synthetic artificial blood, can be stable for several months, even in freeze-dried form. This can be privileged to emergency blood loss or can be used to Royal Medical Corps Army in warfield, which they can use the blood to survive the injured army. That's the end of advances of current status in artificial blood. Next, we're going to talk about the challenges of current status in artificial blood. Let's move into it. Alright, now let's talk about the challenges of artificial blood in current time. The first one is artificial blood has a long way to get into medical use. Why? Because despite of promising development, artificial blood is not yet widely available because most of them are in clinical trial. The researchers and the scientists still study how to get an effective artificial blood. And despite of that, other factors are the cost of producing it, the quality of artificial blood itself, and mass manufacturing. And the second challenge is artificial blood has limited functions and use. As we know, artificial blood can't yet fully substitute the function in red blood cell. As we know, red blood cell can carry oxygen, has immunity, can clot our blood, and it can be in our body for 120 days. But for artificial blood, it just carry the oxygen itself and it doesn't last too long in our body. It just lasts until 24 hours. And as for the market potential, If the artificial blood is developed in this near time, the request will be high because people request a safe, stable, and universal blood alternative. And the second is, it could be used legally in form of emergency cases such as in war zones or in a rural area that has insufficient blood. That's the end of the current status of artificial blood. Now, let's move to the conclusion in the next slide. For conclusion slide, we're going to talk about 4 points. The first point is human trials are happening. Artificial blood is not just science fiction anymore because in recent advances, it's not just we have laboratory grown red blood cells and freeze dried synthetic blood. Isn't it cool? And all of this has been brought to this field where a point that the laboratory grown red blood cell has been used in human in the first clinical trial in 2022. The second point is artificial blood has major advantages over donor blood. Why? Because artificial blood is universal compatible because it doesn't need a specific blood type. It can be transfused for all blood type. The second is it has longer shelf life in storation. And the last one is easier to transport because it has longer shelf life, so it can be stored easily if especially in rural area and emergency cases. The third point is artificial blood can't fully substitute all the function of red blood cells yet, such as clothing, immunity. All artificial blood can do is just carrying the oxygen in our body for just in a short term period. Hence, cost, function, and the safety is still being processed. As the last point is, artificial blood is seen to be for emergency purposes only because since it just can circulate in our body for 24 hours, it should be seen as emergency focus too, rather than full replacement of donor blood. And it could be chronically used for trauma care, emergency transfusion, or for disaster response. And maybe for rare blood type patients rather than full replacements of donor blood in the long term. That's all. Thank you.